The world of ancient Rome was a place of incredible complexity, with social classes bound by tradition and power jealously guarded by an elite few. Into this intricate tapestry, a figure was born who would come to reshape not only Rome, but the destiny of the Western world: Gaius Julius Caesar. From the outset, Caesar's path was neither simple nor assured. While his birth in July 100 BCE granted him entry into the patrician Julian clan, the family's fortunes had been on a decline for generations. The Julian gens had little political influence when Caesar came of age, and his early life was marked by both promise and peril. Caesar was born in a time of chaos and transition for Rome. The Republic was beset by internal conflict, corruption, and civil war. Political violence had become common, and the old Roman virtues of duty, simplicity, and self-sacrifice seemed to have been replaced by intrigue, ambition, and excess. Caesar's father died when he was 16, forcing him to take on the family's leadership at a young age. Even as a teenager, Caesar demonstrated a quick mind, a keen sense of ambition, and an uncanny ability to understand the shifting sands of politics. An early challenge faced by Caesar was during the regime of Sulla, the ruthless dictator who emerged victorious from a violent civil war. Sulla sought to purge enemies of the state, and Caesar, due to his family's links to Sulla's political opponents and his own marriage to Cornelia, daughter of the prominent politician Cinna, was marked for death. Displaying his lifelong courage and resilience, Caesar stubbornly refused to divorce Cornelia despite the overwhelming risk to his life. For this act of defiance, his patrimony was stripped and his name was entered onto Sulla's death lists. Thus, a young Caesar was forced into hiding, living a precarious existence on the outskirts of Rome, constantly moving, relying on loyal friends and even generous bribes to survive. During this time, the seeds of Caesar's formidable resilience and inventiveness were sown. He learned quickly that adaptability and forging strong alliances were crucial to survival. After Sulla's eventual pardon, secured in part by influential family friends, Caesar departed for military service with the army in Asia Minor. It was here, far from the familiar streets and politics of Rome, that Caesar first began to build a reputation for resourcefulness and daring. Commanders soon recognized his potential. In the siege of Mytilene and later, against the pirates who menaced the Mediterranean, Caesar showed not merely bravery, but an innovative mind in both tactics and diplomacy. One of the formative experiences of his early career was his notorious kidnapping by Cilician pirates. In a tale that has since entered the annals of legend, Caesar, sailing for Rhodes to continue his studies in rhetoric, was seized and held ransom. Rather than cower, Caesar amused himself by treating his captors with a curious mixture of arrogance and charm. He participated in their games, wrote poetry, and even shamed them for not demanding a higher ransom. He told them outright that he would have them all killed as soon as he was free, an oath he fulfilled mercilessly, marshaling local forces to capture the pirates after his release. This episode not only illustrates Caesar's audacity and iron will, but also reveals a mind comfortable with bold statements, risky wagers, and creative solutions, traits that would define all Caesar's undertakings, from his reforms to his battle strategies. His return to Rome was marked by a deliberate effort to cultivate public opinion. He donned the toga pecta, a color reserved for triumph, and spent lavishly to entertain the masses. Even as he operated in the background of Roman politics, the shrewdness of his maneuvers was clear. He quietly aligned himself with the populares, champions of the people, as opposed to the optimates who represented the old oligarchy. Caesar's understanding of the power of the mob and the mechanisms of public sentiment was years ahead of his contemporaries. Through generous gifts, public games, and works of charity, he cast himself as a friend to Rome's many disenfranchised. Despite Caesar's relentless ambition, his career advanced by calculated steps. He became a military tribune, a quaestor in Spain, and an aedile, gaining the experience and the visibility necessary to rise higher. Each new post brought its own tests, and Caesar responded with relentless energy. He spent his own fortune on lavish games to gain favor, but even as the debts mounted, he seemed unworried, confident in his destiny. Unlike most politicians, who shrank at the sight of increasing obligations, Caesar believed in the concept of spending to earn, and understood the power of investment, not merely of money, but also effort, reputation, and relationships. Through his aedileship, and soon after, as Pontifex Maximus, Caesar ushered reforms that showcased his innovative mind. He reorganized the city's grain distribution, reformed ancient religious rites, and ensured the urban poor were heard in the corridors of power. It wasn't just that Caesar was bold, he was, in the truest sense, an inventor. Never content with tradition for its own sake, he examined systems and devised improvements. That practical creativity, rare among the cautious senators of his day, made him truly revolutionary. While some accused him of pursuing popularity, Caesar saw himself as addressing real needs, using popularity to power the engine of social reform. The climb to power required more than innovation. It demanded a profound understanding of human nature. Caesar's friendships and alliances, most notably with Crassus and Pompey, forming what would come to be known as the First Triumvirate, were the result of both personal charm and political calculation. Caesar knew that only by allying rival power blocks could he break into the commanding heights of Roman politics. Crassus, the richest man in Rome, supplied much-needed funds. Pompey, the charismatic general, offered legitimacy and military support. With their backing, Caesar was made consul, the highest office in the land. Here, his genius for reform reached full flower. He pushed through laws redistributing land to veterans and mitigated debt for ordinary citizens. Throughout his rise, Caesar faced relentless opposition from the Senate's conservative faction. His legislation was challenged, his methods decried as illegal, and his alliances derided as dangerous. But Caesar's rhetorical skills and his ability to sway the populous assembly often outflanked his opponents. He mastered the art of public persuasion and used every tool at his disposal, from fiery speeches to carefully orchestrated spectacles. It is at this juncture in Caesar's life that a powerful message emerges. Adversity is inevitable on the path to greatness, but it is often the source of unique strength. Caesar did not simply endure challenge. He found in it fuel for invention, motivation for reform, and opportunities that others missed. Readers may find in this the encouragement to use their own difficulties as ground for growth, and to recognize that innovation rarely comes from comfort. Caesar's consulship ended, but his true ambition was only beginning to unfold. With the posting to Gaul, he received command of legions that would transform him from Roman statesman to legendary general. In Gaul, among the forests and rivers of what is now France and Belgium, Caesar encountered new cultures and unprecedented military challenges. The Gallic tribes were fierce, their alliances shifting, and their armies fierce opponents to the trained legionaries of Rome. Many thought the task impossible, convinced Caesar had been sent to a distant province as a way of curtailing his dangerous career in Rome. But Caesar's response was to raise the standard of Roman military invention to heights never before seen. He reformed the legion's training, developed mobile camp fortification techniques that made his forces nearly invulnerable in the field, and learned to utilize local intelligence and diplomacy to divide and conquer massive enemy coalitions. In one of his most famous exploits, he bridged the Rhine in a matter of days, a feat thought impossible, and staged an audacious crossing into Germanic territory. Later, he would take his legions to Britain, becoming the first Roman general to invade that distant land. The conquest of Gaul brought challenges not merely military, but also ethical. Caesar's Commentary De Bello Gallico, his first-hand account of the wars, reveals a mind wrestling with both the brutality and the necessity of force. He faced revolts and betrayals, treacherous weather, and even mutiny among his own men, but each time, Caesar's leadership and strategic brilliance prevailed. His adaptability was legendary. He would adjust strategy to suit terrain, weather, or the temperament of his soldiers. He led from the front, sharing the dangers and privations of campaign life, forging a bond of loyalty, so strong that his army would later follow him across the Rubicon in outright defiance of the Senate. Often, his methods were years ahead of contemporary practices. He pioneered the use of rapid engineering in siege warfare, constructing complex works at Alesia that outmatched Gallic ingenuity. He recognized the value of intelligence gathering and psychological warfare, employing both to sap enemy resolve before the clash of swords. Caesar's ability to improvise, to rethink the conventions of war and governance, allowed him to achieve the impossible again and again. Yet, even in war, Caesar never lost sight of grand objectives. While his exploits made him rich and famous, he saw the conquest of Gaul as a means to a greater end, the transformation of Rome itself. His victories in the field fed his popularity at home. Rome's people began to see not just a general, but a leader of vision, a man who could conquer, reform, and lead society to a new greatness. Welcome. Dive into the extraordinary world of Julius Caesar, the man whose brilliance, courage, and innovation reshaped the course of history. From daring adventures and gripping challenges to revolutionary ideas that set him light years ahead of his time, this story reveals the secrets behind Caesar's rise and legacy. Stay with us till the end to uncover lessons that still inspire leadership and resilience today. Don't forget to subscribe and drop your thoughts in the comments below. Your engagement means a lot and helps us bring you more fascinating stories like this. From the cold landscapes of Gaul to the heart of Roman power struggles, Caesar's command in Gaul was as much about military mastery as it was about political genius. His campaigns transformed raw soldiers into a cohesive, unstoppable force. The Roman legions under his command learned to build fortified camps overnight, making surprise attacks nearly impossible and ensuring their safety in hostile territory. His ability to adapt tactics based on the complex geography and tribal politics was nothing short of revolutionary. Through skilled diplomacy, he exploited divisions among Gallic tribes, turning enemies into allies and preventing unified resistance. One of Caesar's most miraculous feats was constructing a bridge across the Rhine River within just 10 days. This bold act wasn't merely a military maneuver, but a demonstration of Rome's engineering prowess and psychological warfare. It sent a loud message to Rome's northern enemies. Caesar could strike anywhere, anytime. His invasion of Britain, far from Roman territory, further cemented his reputation as a relentless innovator and strategist, willing to challenge limitations no one else dared face. But these conquests brought ethical dilemmas. Caesar's own writings, his Commentarii de Bello Gallico, reveal the nuanced mind behind the soldier. He often weighed the balance between necessary force and the desire for a lasting peace. Rebellions and betrayals tested not only his tactics, but his leadership. Even when internal troubles arose, like mutinies, Caesar's frontline presence and empathetic command maintained army loyalty that would become legendary. Beyond battles, Caesar introduced groundbreaking military logistics and reconnaissance, prioritizing scouting and intelligence to outsmart enemies before clashes. His combination of engineering skill, psychological insight, and tactical flexibility set him apart from contemporaries and ensured victory where others faltered. More than a conqueror, Caesar envisioned reform. His victories were tools to rebuild Rome's fractured society. The wealth and fame from Gaul empowered him to challenge the old order, pushing through reforms that addressed Rome's socio-political crises. Here began the transformation that would end the Republic and lay seeds for an empire. As Caesar's campaigns in Gaul pressed forward, his military reputation grew into legend. But with increasing triumph came a more complex political landscape back in Rome. the alliances that had initially boosted his rise, most notably the first triumvirate with Pompey and Crassus, began to strain under the weight of ambition and personal rivalry. Crassus's death in 53 BCE at the Battle of Carrhae, a catastrophic defeat against the Parthians, shocked Roman society and destabilized the fragile balance of power. Without Crassus as the financial glue holding the triumvirate together, tensions between Pompey and Caesar escalated. Pompey, once a staunch ally, aligned more closely with the Senate's conservative faction, wary of Caesar's growing influence and the unprecedented accumulation of power in one man's hands. The Senate itself, traditionally the arbiter of Rome's political destiny, viewed Caesar's military success and immense popularity as a direct threat to the Republic's foundations. Senators who feared the erosion of their privilege began whispering about Caesar as a would-be tyrant, plotting means to curb his influence. Amid these brewing hostilities, Caesar's political acumen took center stage. He knew that outright confrontation in Rome was fraught with peril, yet recognized that retreat would mean the end of his aspirations. The Rubicon River marked more than a geographical boundary. It became a symbol of irreversible choice. In 49 BCE, defying the Senate's direct orders to disband his army and return to Rome as a private citizen, Caesar led his legions south across the Rubicon, uttering an infamous phrase often paraphrased as "the die is cast." This act of defiance ignited a civil war that would determine Rome's very future. The Civil War was unlike any Caesar had previously faced. His opponent, Pompey, was a skilled general with established senatorial support, commanding forces many times the size of Caesar's army. The war unfolded as a complex dance of military campaigns, political machinations, and shifting loyalties. Yet Caesar's strategic genius again proved decisive. He moved rapidly, employing speed, surprise, and unorthodox tactics that kept his enemies off balance. The campaign to take Rome was swift. Pompey fled to Greece, gathering forces for a decisive confrontation. Caesar's decision to pursue Pompey across the Adriatic Sea demonstrated his aggressive resolve. The Battle of Pharsalus in 48 BCE was a turning point. Despite being outnumbered, Caesar's disciplined legions, meticulously trained and profoundly loyal, routed Pompey's troops. Pompey himself escaped, but was later assassinated in Egypt, sealing the collapse of senatorial opposition. Caesar's victory was not just military, but symbolic. He had crushed the traditional aristocratic power in the most direct manner possible. While his military successes cemented his dominance, Caesar's handling of governance revealed his forward-thinking approach to leadership. He was not merely a warrior. He was a reformer intent on addressing Rome's structural woes. After the Civil War, he embarked on sweeping reforms, reorganizing the calendar into the Julian calendar, which refined the Roman system closer to the solar year and remained fundamentally in use for centuries to come, restructuring the debt laws to relieve creditors and debtors, and redistributing land to veterans and the urban poor, a direct challenge to senatorial elites. Yet his reforms were met with fierce resistance. The Senate, no longer able to openly oppose him militarily, resorted to clandestine plots. Caesar's increasing centralization of power, he was declared dictator perpetuo, dictator for life, was perceived as an existential threat to the Republic's ideals. His accumulation of titles, honors, and near-kingly power unsettled many who clung to the belief that Rome must remain a republic, not a monarchy. Caesar's forward-looking vision also extended to social integration. He proposed extending Roman citizenship to many provincial peoples, recognizing that the Republic's growth into a vast empire necessitated new models of governance beyond old city-state customs. His policies reflected a pragmatic approach to empire, balancing Roman traditions with the realities of governing a diverse, expansive population. During this time, Caesar also undertook significant urban development projects. He revamped Rome's infrastructure, commissioning public buildings, temples, forums, and curbing popular unrest by reforming the grain dole, ensuring the city's supply was stable and fairly distributed. In these projects, one sees the application of Caesar's inventive spirit, engineering solutions merged with social policy to stabilize and enhance Rome's urban environment. Despite these achievements, Caesar's enemies conspired relentlessly. The Ides of March 44 BCE marked the culmination of their fears and frustrations. Led by Senators Brutus, Cassius, and others, many of whom had been allies or proteges, Caesar was brutally assassinated during a Senate session. Their act was meant to restore the Republic, but it instead triggered a chain of events that led to further civil war and the ultimate rise of Caesar's heir, Augustus, as Rome's first emperor. Caesar's legacy is a paradox of ambition and reform, destruction and innovation. He was a man ahead of his time in military strategy, political innovation, and social vision. His leadership style focused on adaptability, whether in war or governance, and the courage to challenge established norms. The challenges he faced, internal dissent, external threats, betrayal, shaped him into a figure whose life and death altered the course of Western history. From his early defiance of Sulla's dictatorship, through his audacious military campaigns, his revolutionary reforms, and his ultimate assassination, Julius Caesar exemplifies how vision coupled with courage can reshape the world. His story teaches that progress often comes at great cost, but that innovation and resilience remain the engines of transformation. Following Julius Caesar's assassination on the Ides of March in 44 BCE, Rome was plunged into a tumultuous period that tested the very foundations of the republic he sought to transform. His death, intended by the conspirators to restore the republic's traditional order, instead ushered in a cycle of violence and political upheaval that ultimately resulted in the birth of the Roman Empire. This period vividly demonstrated both the fragility of political systems reliant on personalities and the enduring influence of Caesar's vision. The immediate aftermath of Caesar's murder saw a power vacuum, with no clear successor or governance framework established. The Senate, weakened and wary, struggled to regain authority as public outrage surged. Mark Antony, Caesar's loyal ally and co-consul, seized control of Rome's political machinery, quickly using rhetoric and public spectacle to sway the populace against the assassins. His stirring funeral oration famously incited the crowd to riot, turning popular sentiment decisively against the conspirators Brutus and Cassius. Caesar's adopted heir and great-nephew, Gaius Octavius, later known as Augustus, emerged as the pivotal figure in this chaotic landscape. Octavius, then a relatively unknown young aristocrat, demonstrated remarkable political cunning and resilience. Upon learning of Caesar's death, he immediately secured his inheritance, ensured political alliances, and cultivated support within the army and the Roman people. Octavius' calculated moves counterbalanced Antony's power, and together with Marcus Aemilius Lepidus, they formed the Second Triumvirate to consolidate control and suppress opposition. This alliance, however, was marked by internal tension and ruthless purges. The proscriptions, a list of enemies condemned to death and confiscation of property, underscored the brutal reality of Roman politics. The bloodshed extinguished many Republican supporters and shifted the balance of power decisively in favor of the triumvirate. They defeated Brutus, Cassius, and their forces at the Second Battle of Philippi in 42 BCE, decisively ending the hopes of a republican restoration. As the triumvirate divided the empire's territories amongst themselves, Octavius governed the west, Antony took the east, and Lepidus held Africa. Over time, Lepidus was sidelined, and tension between Octavius and Antony escalated, culminating in the decisive naval Battle of Actium in 31 BC. Octavius' victory there paved the way for his unrivaled control over Rome and its dominions. The political restructuring Octavius implemented laid the foundation of a new, stable regime, the Principate. Although he outwardly maintained republican forms, concentrating power carefully behind the scenes. He was effectively Rome's first emperor. The legacy of Julius Caesar loomed large here. Many of the reforms and innovations Caesar had begun found fuller expression under Augustus, who deftly avoided the pitfalls of overt dictatorship by cloaking authority in the guise of restored republican governance. One of Caesar's most durable legacies was his reform of the Roman calendar. Prior to Caesar's intervention, the Roman calendar was misaligned with the solar year, causing seasonal drift and confusion in civic and agricultural planning. Working with the Alexandrian astronomer Sazegenes, Caesar introduced the Julian calendar in 45 BCE. It established a year of 365 days, with a leap day added every 4 years, significantly improving accuracy and stability. This calendar, with minor modifications, endured across centuries and cultures, shaping the measurement of time beyond Rome's borders. Caesar's legislative reforms further addressed economic and social instability. By redistributing land to displaced veterans and poor citizens, he aimed to reduce unemployment and increase social cohesion. These reforms, coupled with reorganization of provincial governance, diluted the concentration of senatorial power and attempted to integrate Rome's vast territories more harmoniously into a unified imperial system. This was revolutionary in the context of the Republic's traditionally localized oligarchic governance. His urban policies included renewal of Rome's infrastructure, extensive road-building projects that enhanced communication and trade throughout the empire, improvement of Rome's water supply with new aqueducts, and construction of public buildings and forums that symbolized a new era of prosperity. These physical legacies were not only practical, but also symbolic, projecting Rome's might and Caesar's vision of a lasting civilization. Despite Caesar's strides in reform, his concentration of power alarmed many contemporaries. His appointment as dictator perpetuo and accumulation of honors fueled fears that Rome was transitioning from a republic to monarchy. These tensions highlight a critical theme in Caesar's story, a conflict between innovation and tradition. Caesar's reforms were transformative, but challenged deeply rooted cultural and political norms. His life and death highlight the complex dynamics between visionary leadership and the preservation of established order. Caesar's military innovations also left an indelible mark. Beyond the tactics and engineering feats achieved during his Gallic Wars, his integration of intelligence operations and psychological warfare laid groundwork for modern military strategy. His direct communication with troops, personal leadership in battles, and logistical foresight created a model of command that influenced generations of commanders. Another often overlooked aspect of Caesar's legacy was his literary contribution. His works, especially the Commentarii de Bello Gallico and Commentarii de Bello Chivalry, provide not only detailed military and political accounts, but also reveal Caesar's aptitude for narrative control and propaganda. Through clear, concise Latin prose, Caesar presented himself as both a noble leader and a pragmatic reformer, shaping his public image for posterity. These commentaries remain critical primary sources for understanding Roman history and military practice. The psychological and philosophical dimensions of Caesar's character were equally complex. He embodied the contradictions of ambition and generosity, ruthlessness and clemency. Notably, Caesar's policy of clementia, mercy towards defeated enemies, was both a political strategy to win loyalty and a reflection of his belief that reconciliation was essential for Rome's future stability. This contrasted sharply with many predecessors' brutal punitive practices and marked an evolution in Roman political culture. Caesar's life invites reflection on leadership, innovation, and the costs of power. His story is not simply one of conquest and ambition, but a narrative about the transformation of societies through bold ideas and relentless pursuit of vision. The challenges he faced, from internal conspiracies, shifting alliances, to the burden of legacy, underscore timeless truths about human nature and governance. In this light, Caesar's enduring influence extends beyond ancient Rome. His reforms, both military and civil, anticipated the complexities of managing vast, diverse empires. His example illustrates how leadership demands both adaptability and a willingness to break with tradition. Yet, his assassination reminds us that innovation often meets resistance, and that the journey of progress can be perilous and uncertain. As we consider Julius Caesar's life, the interplay between his visionary reforms and the turbulent contexts in which they unfolded provides insight into the nature of power and the evolution of political systems. His story challenges us to think critically about how societies balance change and continuity, and how leaders can inspire transformation while respecting foundational values. In the wake of Julius Caesar's death and the ensuing power struggles that reshaped Rome's political landscape, his legacy emerged not merely as that of a formidable general or charismatic leader, but as a transformative catalyst whose ideas and practices transcended his own era. The principles he embodied in military innovation, political reform, and leadership continue to inspire centuries of thinkers, rulers, and strategists. Caesar's life tells a story of how vision, coupled with courage and adaptability, can alter the course of history, shaping societies in profound ways. One of the defining aspects of Caesar's legacy is the manner in which he fused military prowess with political acumen. Unlike many commanders who excelled solely on the battlefield, Caesar understood that lasting power depended on simultaneously mastering the art of governance. His military campaigns, particularly in Gaul, showcased not just brute force, but strategic brilliance, incorporating engineering, intelligence, and diplomacy into a comprehensive framework that allowed him to subdue diverse and often fractious peoples. He pioneered rapid mobility with his legions, innovative fortifications, and logistical systems that ensured sustained campaigns far from home bases. These methods became foundational for Roman military doctrine and influenced warfare well beyond antiquity. Caesar's ability to integrate political reform with military conquest was unprecedented. He used his battlefield successes to gain leverage in Rome, dismantling entrenched aristocratic privileges and promoting policies aimed at easing social inequality. His reforms were both practical and visionary, including land redistribution programs, debt relief to ease widespread economic distress, and expanding citizenship rights to provinces, thereby knitting a diverse empire more tightly together. These initiatives underlined Caesar's understanding that Rome's strength lay not only in its military might, but in social cohesion and administrative efficiency. His restructuring of the Roman calendar, the Julian calendar, stands as another enduring contribution. Prior to his intervention, Roman society suffered from a calendar out of synchronization with the solar year, complicating agriculture, religious observance, and civil administration. By incorporating a 365-day year with a leap day every 4 years, Caesar inaugurated a system of timekeeping that brought order and predictability. This reform was scientific and practical, reflecting his foresight in aligning civil life with natural cycles, and many modern calendars trace their origins to this innovation. Moreover, Caesar's literary works, particularly his commentaries on the Gallic Wars and the Civil Wars, provide invaluable insights into his mindset and method. Beyond their military narrative, these prose texts serve as early examples of political propaganda and self-fashioning, demonstrating his keen awareness of public perception. He crafted a narrative that portrayed him as a noble, pragmatic leader committed to Rome's welfare, a portrayal critical to his enduring image. His ability to communicate clearly and persuasively remains a study in effective leadership communication. Yet Caesar's story also carries cautionary lessons about the nature of power and the tension between innovation and tradition. His concentration of authority, culminating in his appointment as dictator for life, alarmed many Romans who feared the loss of their republic's freedoms. The elite feared his reforms undermined the centuries-old republican system they governed, a system based on checks and balances, collegiality, and a separation of power. These concerns culminated in his assassination, a dramatic episode that underscored the perils inherent in disrupting established orders too rapidly and alienating powerful stakeholders. Nevertheless, the assassination itself did not reverse Caesar's influence. Rather, it accelerated the transformation of Rome from republic to empire. His heir, Augustus, inherited and institutionalized many of Caesar's reforms, solidifying the autocratic structure that would govern Rome for centuries. Augustus cleverly balanced power with the appearance of restored republican forms, yet the foundation laid by Caesar was unmistakable. The transition highlighted how visionary leadership can both destroy and create frameworks of governance. Leadership scholars often point to Caesar's adaptability as a cornerstone of his success. Facing shifting political currents and volatile military theaters, he continually redefined his strategies. Whether cultivating alliances, innovating logistics on the battlefield, or deploying rhetoric to sway public opinion, Caesar exemplified resilience in the face of adversity. His life exemplifies the power of flexibility combined with resolute ambition, a timeless formula for transformative leadership. The ethical complexities of Caesar's life further enrich his legacy. He wielded clemency skillfully, offering mercy to defeated enemies to foster loyalty and stability, contrasting many predecessors' harsh retributions. This approach to reconciliation, rather than annihilation, reflected an advanced political pragmatism and a nuanced grasp of human nature. Yet, it sits alongside episodes of ruthless calculation, reminding us that leadership often entails difficult moral compromises. From a broader perspective, Caesar's life reflects the dynamics of societal change, how innovations in governance, military science, and culture emerge from the crucible of conflict and challenge. His story underscores the notion that progress is rarely linear or peaceful. It often demands bold, sometimes controversial actions that disrupt the status quo. The resistance to his reforms reveals the natural tension within societies between continuity and change, between established traditions and emerging visions. In contemporary terms, Caesar's experience resonates with leaders facing complex challenges: political upheaval, societal fragmentation, or technological disruptions. His example encouraged leaders to blend strategic vision with pragmatic action, to communicate purpose compellingly, and to remain adaptable amid uncertainty. It also cautions about the risks of over-centralized power and the importance of balancing innovation with respect for institutions. Finally, Julius Caesar's life story is a story of human potential, how one individual can leverage intellect, courage, and innovation to leave an indelible mark on history. Despite his flaws and the tragic end, his contributions to military strategy, political thought, governance, and culture remain foundational to Western civilization. His story is a testament to the enduring human quest for order, justice, and progress amid chaos. In the long shadow that Julius Caesar cast across Roman history, the decades after his death revealed how pervasive his legacy was. His innovative spirit had not only transformed the political machinery of Rome during his life, but also persisted in shaping the destiny of the empire, and indeed, much of Western governance and culture for centuries to come. Where most men's influence wanes with the passing of their generation, Caesar's seemed only to intensify, his actions subject to study, emulation, and vilification by those who came after. When Octavian, later Augustus, firmly established the Roman Empire, the guiding hand behind many initial policies was the inspiration and often the explicit blueprint of Caesar's reforms. The Senate, which had long treated the title dictator with suspicion, now found itself presiding in a realm where Caesar was not merely a family name, but a synonym for supreme rulership. The office itself transcended personality and became a model for power, leaving its imprint in the languages and titles of future ages, most notably in the German Kaiser and Russian Tsar, both derived from Caesar's name. Caesar's reputation as a military innovator continued to resonate throughout the Roman world. The legions he had trained, the siege tactics he perfected, and the logistical systems he pioneered became standard practice in Roman military doctrine. Under his methods, the Roman armies pushed the boundaries of the empire to their greatest extent. Generals who followed in his footsteps, whether in Britain, Lycia, or Parthia, were acutely aware that they were walking the paths that Caesar had blazed, both in strategy and in ambition. Equally transformative was his approach to governance. Caesar's decision to extend citizenship to various non-Roman peoples, especially in Gaul and Hispania, sowed the seeds for a cosmopolitan empire. Where once Rome had jealously guarded its exclusive citizenship, Caesar's reforms fostered a sense of shared identity that, at least in part, helped sustain Rome's unity across vast distances and cultural divides. This inclusiveness, so ahead of its time, laid the foundation for the intricate tapestry of cultures and laws that would characterize the provinces of the later Roman world. His reorganization of provincial administration also injected enduring stability. Caesar sought to reduce corruption by imposing term limits, demanding greater accountability, and tying the success of a governor to the prosperity and peace of their province. These changes rippled through Roman society, even as the machinery of government evolved and grew more autocratic under Augustus and his successors. Even in the arts and intellectual culture, Caesar was revered as a paragon of clear, persuasive communication. His military commentaries were required reading for students of Latin and oratory for centuries to come. Though his aim was partly self-promotion, the lucid style and rigorous logic of his prose set a standard seldom matched in political and military literature. Future generations of statesmen, from Cicero to Thomas Jefferson, found in his works examples of the persuasive power of words shaped by clarity, purpose, and conviction. But Caesar's legacy was not uniformly positive. Posthumous critique of his near-monarchical power was fierce in certain circles. The Senate's fears that his centralization of authority would destroy republican values were far from baseless. The balance of shared governance in competitive politics gave way to the single-person rule of the Principate. For traditionalists, this was a grave loss, and the Republic's end inspired centuries of debate about the nature of tyranny, constitutional order, and the dangers of unchecked power. It is here that Caesar's story poses questions for all eras. How can societies foster innovation without undermining their core institutions? Is great leadership compatible with freedom and diversity of opinion? Caesar's efforts at reform starkly illustrate that every breakthrough, every leap forward, courts resistance and risks destabilizing what once seemed immutable. History remembers him as both a liberator from the stasis of oligarchy and a destroyer of republican liberties, a paradox that has kept scholars and statesmen discussing his example ever since. Yet the myth and memory of Caesar outlived the political reality. As the Roman world absorbed Christianity and later transitioned into the Byzantine era, his name retained its weight. In medieval chronicles and Renaissance treatises, as well as in the creative imagination of playwrights and poets, Julius Caesar was alternately cast as the embodiment of ambition, the model of clemency and vision, or the ultimate victim of betrayal. William Shakespeare's play immortalized his assassination as a moment of high tragedy and moral debate, with the Ides of March entering the language as a warning against the perils of unchecked ambition and the vulnerabilities of those at the summit of power. Caesar's direct impact on the world beyond Rome also manifested in the spread of Roman engineering, law, and culture, a diffusion accelerated by the very reforms he initiated. Roads, aqueducts, and cities bearing his name became centers of administration, commerce, and learning. The spread of Roman law, with its emphasis on citizenship, contracts, and courts, can be traced in part to Caesar's drive to integrate disparate peoples into a single polity. As centuries passed, Caesar's life offered timeless lessons, not only about the use and abuse of power, but also about resilience, boldness, and the audacity of vision. His genius lay not merely in his ability to win battles or sway crowds, but in his instinct for recognizing when radical action was needed, and then acting without hesitation, even when the personal costs might be fatal. Caesar's enduring message is this: to change the world, one must be willing to risk everything, but also to temper boldness with mercy and force with persuasion. Every era has its Caesars, its innovators and disruptors, its visionaries and reformers, who summon the courage to imagine new structures, new futures, and who are tested by the old world's resistance. Some succeed, others fail, but all writing themselves into the story of progress that stretches beyond any one life or legend. Over the centuries that followed Julius Caesar's death, his legend became inseparably woven into the tapestry of world culture. In every era, be it the Roman Empire, the Middle Ages, the Renaissance, or the modern age, Caesar's name was invoked as a symbol, a warning, a goal, and at times, a myth far grander than the man himself. As the Roman Empire reached its zenith under the emperors who claimed his name as their own, Caesar transformed from the moniker of a family to the very definition of supreme authority. In the provinces, from Britannia in the misty north to the sands of Syria, governors, generals, and magistrates sent forth edicts with the authority of Caesar, the word itself now weaving a spell of legitimacy. Statues of Julius, sometimes beside Augustus or later emperors, adorned city squares and temples, reinforcing not only imperial unity, but the sense that all Roman order flowed from the vision of that original reformer. This imperial symbolism shaped centuries of politics and identity. When the empire fragmented and successor states rose on its ruins, the echo remained. German and Slavic rulers, eager to show continuity with the grandeur of Rome, adopted the title of Kaiser or Tsar, using Caesar's name to legitimize rule over lands and peoples who had never known Roman governance. In Constantinople, the emperors of Byzantium saw themselves as the inheritors, not just of Augustus, but of Julius Caesar himself, keepers of the flame of Romanitas, the elusive spirit of Rome. Caesar's fame propelled even his adversaries and betrayers into renown. Brutus and Cassius became bywords for conscience, dilemma, and tragic patriotism. Poets and philosophers debated whether such men were heroes or villains, whether their fateful actions on the Ides of March represented the supreme defense of liberty, or a fatal wound to progress and order. The story's complexity made it endlessly malleable for artistic purposes, a morality play for every generation. Beyond the halls of power, the tale of Julius Caesar became a touchstone in literature and drama. Ancient authors embellished the story, making Caesar a philosophical figure as much as a political one. Medieval chroniclers situated him alongside Alexander the Great as one of the 9 worthies, exemplars of leadership and courage. The Renaissance, with its revived interest in classical antiquity, brought Caesar to the fore as an emblem of humanist ambition and the perils of unchecked greatness. The most iconic literary meditation on his life arrived with William Shakespeare's Julius Caesar, first performed around 1599. Shakespeare's play distilled the drama, the betrayal, the ambitions, and the psychological depths behind Caesar's assassination, making the line, "Et tu, Brute?" a shorthand for the pain of betrayal by one's closest allies. The play's meditation on fate, free will, and the responsibilities of citizens and rulers spoke not only to Elizabethan anxieties, but to all generations, ensuring that every crisis of leadership could find a mirror in Rome's ancient drama. In the Enlightenment, political theorists and revolutionaries returned to Caesar's legacy. Some saw him as a tyrant whose ambition shattered the checks and balances of republican governance. Others as a visionary reformer who challenged a corrupt and ossified order. The mythologized Caesar supplied ammunition for both supporters of strong, central leadership and defenders of civil liberty. In the age of revolution, his life became an allegory. Napoleon, for instance, explicitly compared his own ambitions to those of Caesar, seeing in his career the model of a man who could reshape society through force of will and intellect. Even Napoleon's fate, rising from the chaos of revolution to supreme ruler, then falling to betrayal and exile, seemed to echo the arc of Caesar's story. In art, in moral tales, and even in popular accounts, Caesar's character is continually re-examined. Are we to remember him for his military prowess, for the legendary discipline and mobility of his legions, the swiftness of his engineering feats, the victories at Alesia, Pharsalus, and Zela, for his administrative reforms, rationalizing the calendar, extending Roman citizenship, reshaping the workings of government to fit an expanding world, or for the tragic arc of power, an arc not of hubris alone, but of an evolving vision forever shadowed by ancient fears of kingship and the unpredictable force of mobs and conspirators. In many ways, Caesar's story functions as a kind of mirror, reflecting the values, anxieties, and desires of each era that retells it. For those seeking an example of visionary leadership, he remains impressive. A man unafraid to challenge conventions, to invest his entire being in reform and adaptation. For those warning against the ambitions of a single individual, the perils he unleashed on Roman society, the civil war, the loss of the republic, and the rise of autocracy are stark reminders of how sudden and profound systemic change can be. Yet a subtler, more enduring lesson from Caesar's life is the inescapable complexity of leadership and reform. Real innovation, whether in technology, governance, or society, rarely arrives gently or in complete harmony with what came before. Caesar was at once a product of his age and the force that transformed it, a shaper of fate, but also shaped by the tides of history and the unpredictable decisions of allies and opponents. The world he left to his heirs was more complicated, more cosmopolitan, and in some ways more precarious than the one he inherited. That is often the true nature of progress. It resolves old problems at the cost of fresh challenges. Across time, the fascination with Caesar is sustained by our sense that the issues he faced, ambition, justice, power, loyalty, tradition versus change, are permanently embedded in the human condition. He invites us to ask, even today, what kind of leadership is needed to transform a troubled world? What sacrifices and dangers attend those who dream beyond the horizon? When do the needs of many outweigh the laws of the few? And how, finally, should one act when called to lead where no path is clearly marked? These questions echo through every retelling of Caesar's story, ensuring that Gaius Julius Caesar, more than 2,000 years after his murder, continues not only to haunt the imagination, but to challenge and inspire it. The next and final part will further explore the farthest reaches of his influence and the lessons that remain relevant as the story of humanity progresses, forever retelling the legend of Rome's most brilliant and enigmatic figure. As the centuries unravel, the world continues to look back at the life of Julius Caesar, finding in its tapestry both caution and inspiration. The Roman roads he once marched upon may have crumbled with the passage of time, but the ideas, disputes, and debates that his life engendered continue to shape our understanding of leadership, ambition, reform, and the very course of human history. Caesar's legend lives not just in marble and manuscript, but in every conversation about the risks and rewards of transformative change, in the uncertainties faced by those who would remake the world, and in the very language with which we discuss power. Even in democratic societies, far removed from the autocratic shadow of ancient Rome, questions about authority, reform, and the delicate balance between the old and the new echo the dilemmas Caesar once faced and forced upon the world. The physical symbols of his legacy, busts, coins, ruins of forums and roads, are mere fragments, pointers to something vaster. The reach of his reforms is evident in calendars on modern walls, in the traditions of governance and law, in the concept that citizenship can unite peoples across boundaries of language and blood. Beyond these, there is his example of adaptability, his willingness to learn, borrow, and innovate at every turn. whether on the battlefield, in political infighting, or in his communication with the masses. His story is often remembered as a great tragedy, but it is also fundamentally a story of possibility. Caesar reminds us that greatness is never merely inherited, but must be seized, shaped, and defined by the choices one makes in the crucible of adversity. His ability to confront seemingly insurmountable obstacles, exile, debt, assassination attempts, civil war, and to find opportunity even in defeat, is emblematic of a spirit that will not be extinguished by mere misfortune. For every setback, Caesar responded not with resignation, but with relentless creativity and self-invention. Reflecting more deeply, we see how his story is one of paradox. He was ruthless, yet capable of mercy. Deeply political, yet often idealistic. An invader and lawgiver. A revolutionary and a traditionalist. Each interpreter, be it historian, philosopher, artist, or citizen, finds in him something different. A symbol of hope or warning, a tale of ambition fulfilled, or a dramatic morality play cautioning against overreach. His questions remain our questions. How do we cultivate resilience? How do we lead wisely without succumbing to the temptations of unchecked authority? How do we honor the past while forging a better future? Because Caesar's life is both individual and universal, it has inspired countless others to rise, dream, and act. Leaders have modeled his boldness, even as they fear repeating his downfall. Innovators find encouragement in his reforms and the audacity with which he challenged stagnant institutions. Artists and writers transform his story time and again, mining its inexhaustible drama and its unresolved tensions. And in a world ever seeking new frontiers, be they technological, political, scientific, or moral, the lesson Caesar imparts is as vital as ever. Progress comes to those who dare to imagine and force into existence what others deem impossible. Yet, even the loftiest vision is accompanied by a shadow, the need for humility, for consensus, and for the recognition that lasting change arises not from the edicts of one, but the collective journey of the many. In the end, perhaps the most poignant message of Caesar's journey is that every life touches history, whether in great or small measure, and that the boundaries of possibility are always being redrawn. His path, scarred by conflict, luminous with achievement, shadowed by betrayal, reminds us that to innovate is to risk. To lead is to bear not just the glory, but the burden of consequence. So whenever you see the name Caesar in a play, a book, a law, a dream, remember that it encodes not only the triumphs of its bearer, but also the persistent call to each of us to strive boldly, to question wisely, to forgive deeply, and to seek ever, through challenge and change, the shape of a better world. In the arc of his life, as across the drama of civilizations, we are reminded that greatness is forged in both the tumult of history and the quiet decisions of conscience, and that across the centuries, the story of Julius Caesar will echo, celebrated, contested, but never forgotten. Thank you for taking this journey through the epic life, challenges, inventions, and enduring questions left to us by Julius Caesar. If you've enjoyed this series, reflect on the lessons that resonate most and consider what it means to lead, to dream, and to act, whether on the world stage or in the story of your own life.